World War II is often remembered for its heroic victories, iconic battles, and its profound impact on the course of history. But behind the well-known stories lies a darker side to some of the most dangerous battlefields, filled with untold secrets and horrifying truths that have been buried over time. What if the battles we've heard so much about were more brutal, more complex, and more sinister than history lets on? And in today's video, we'll uncover the hidden truths behind the most infamous battlegrounds, the things history left out. Get ready to discover the dark side of war, where the real horrors go far beyond the battlefront. Stalingrad. The name alone evokes images of devastation, courage, and endless sacrifice. It was one of the most intense and brutal battles of World War II, with over 2 million people killed, wounded, or captured. But the secrets of Stalingrad go far beyond the horrifying urban combat and the famous encirclement of the German Sixth Army. What's often left out of the history books is the unimaginable suffering of the civilians trapped in the city. Thousands of innocent men, women, and children were caught between two relentless forces, enduring not only bombings and starvation, but also forced labor, cold, and the horrors of being used as human shields. Additionally, the psychological toll on soldiers, both German and Soviet, was devastating. Soldiers were forced to fight not only for survival, but also under the looming threat of death, with no clear escape. The battle that we remember for its military significance also left scars on an entire generation of civilians, and these stories have largely been overshadowed by the military aspects of the conflict. Okinawa, the final stepping stone before the Allies could launch an invasion of Japan's home islands, was one of the bloodiest and most brutal battles in the Pacific. Over 200,000 people were killed, including 100,000 civilians, most of them Okinawan natives who were forced to fight or face death. What's often left out of the narrative, however, is the horrifying scale of human suffering on the island. Japanese forces used Okinawa civilians as human shields, forcing them into caves to fight to the death or to commit suicide rather than be captured by the Americans. At the same time, the U.S. forces were facing relentless, fanatical resistance. The Marines were exposed to brutal conditions, torrential rain, heat, and disease spread by the sweltering jungle. The battle stretched on for weeks, with close-quarters combat that left soldiers on both sides with severe mental and physical trauma. The true horror of Okinawa didn't just come from the battlefield. It came from the brutal decisions faced by civilians, the forced suicides, and the unimaginable pain endured by those caught in the conflict. It was a devastating prelude to the eventual use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The siege of Leningrad, which lasted for over 900 days, is often remembered for the heroic resistance of the Soviet people. But what is left out of the history of Leningrad is the full extent of the unimaginable starvation, brutality, and human suffering. While soldiers fought to keep the city from falling into German hands, civilians endured unimaginable conditions. The true horror came from the famine that gripped the city. For years, the people of Leningrad were left without adequate food, clean water, or medical supplies. During the winter, the temperatures plummeted, and the cold made survival nearly impossible. Starvation became so severe that cannibalism was reported in certain areas, though many survivors have kept this secret out of shame or trauma. As civilians struggled to stay alive, the Soviet leadership was focused on keeping the military machine running, leaving the city's non-combatants to fend for themselves. While the Soviet Union's victory over the Nazis in Leningrad was hailed as a triumph, it came at a horrific cost. The emotional scars and the trauma of what happened during the siege still haunt the people who lived through it. World War II, the greatest conflict in human history, is often remembered for its epic battles and heroic victories. But beneath the surface of these historic events lies a far darker truth. The untold stories of suffering, betrayal, and brutality that were hidden away by those who wanted to shape the narrative. These are the forgotten battles, the human cost, the secrets that history left out. By shining a light on these dark aspects of the war, we honor those who lived through it whether they were soldiers, civilians, or bystanders. The truth of what happened in these battlefields is often far more complicated than we've been led to believe. History, after all, is rarely as black and white as it seems. Thank you for watching. If you found these untold stories intriguing, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. History is not just about the victories we celebrate, but the lessons we learn from the darker chapters. Let's remember those forgotten stories and reflect on the true cost of war. We'll see you in the next video.